So can you explain to our listeners what happens with oxalates and sulfur and why this is a really important link with why you can't get on top of this chronic inflammation?
Yep. Okay, so like already discussed with minerals binding to the oxalates, and so you can end up with deficiencies that way. Sulfur works a little bit differently. So sulfate is the active form of sulfur that the body uses in the body. And oxalate and sulfate, they share the same transporter on the cell. And a transporter is just literally the way things get in and out of the cell. And so what happens is oxalate is in the bloodstream. The body is like, this is so dangerous. We don't want shards of glass in the blood. So what it does is it will just put it into tissue. I use the example with a lot of clients. It's like having a junk drawer or like that spare bedroom where when people are coming over, you just shove things in there and you deal with it later. So the body goes, need to get this oxalate out of the bloodstream, put it into tissue. So as it goes in on those transporters, it's pushing sulfate out. There's a lot of things in our body. It's all about balance and osmosis. And so as the oxalate goes in, the sulfate gets pushed out. Sulfate doesn't belong on its own in the bloodstream. It's supposed to be bound up to things like our hormones. So when the body goes, well, if you've got this sulfate in the bloodstream, we must have too much, and it wastes it into the urine. So it mistakenly thinks that we've got too much sulfur when actually it's depleting it. So the sulfur becomes depleted in the body. Some people say that they can smell a little bit of a sulfur smell to their urine when they start to identify the whole oxalate picture. But that's not necessarily something that people come saying, I've got this sulfur smelling urine. It's usually something that they realize after the fact.
And what's the big problem with having low sulfur?
Oh, sulfur is one of the most abundant molecules in the body. It's needed to activate all of your hormones. As I said, it transports your hormones in the body. It transports everything in the body. Really important for detoxification. We have one pathway called sulfation, which relies entirely on sulfur. There's so many things that we need sulfur for in the body that we haven't even discovered yet. Whenever we see something that's present in the body in high quantities, we know that it's important.
Yeah, it does it. It does everything.
Does everything, yeah. What doesn't it do? But yeah.
It does it. It does it. It makes glutathione.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just can't get on top of the inflammation without it. So listeners, if you've got low homocysteine, that is actually a red flag that you've got an oxalate problem, because homocysteine is actually a storage molecule for sulfur. And when the body is deplete of sulfur, and oxalates can deplete the body of sulfur, one place it can get it from is from homocysteine. And so the body will chop up homocysteine to get the sulfur, which is a common reason why it's low. So Mel and I are often testing patients for homocysteine, because if it's low, it's like, wow, this is a big red flag for an oxalate problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Homocysteine is such a good test, isn't it? Because if it's high, it's methylation. If it's low, it's sulfur, or at the very minimum, just general toxicity.
As I was saying, like, people email me just so many tests throughout the years. And if they've done homocysteine and if they've done organic acids and oxalate, I look at those first.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're out of whack, we start there.
Yeah.
Low is methylation disruption. High is methylation disruption.